make mistakes. Even when we go to work, there are times when we're given tasks to do that we make mistakes on the job, you know. So it's when we capitalize on children's mistakes like that, it puts undue pressure on children, and it gives them the unrealistic, expectation that mistakes are not allowed.
Okay.
And that's really, really dangerous for a child's confidence, because if a child is now afraid to make mistakes, no great person ever became great without failing or making mistakes.
Now we begin this conversation taking a quote from Henry Ward Beecher, who is a clergyman, social reformer, known for his support for the abolition of slavery, his emphasis on God's love, and his 1875 adultery trial. He once said, "We never know the love of a parent till we become parents ourselves." Absolutely spot on. My next quote is from Chrissy Teigen, American model and TV personality, once said, "My biggest parenting conundrum: why is it so hard to put someone who is already sleepy to sleep?" I can relate, especially for new parents. Now, my next quote is from O.A. Batista, author, who once said, "The best inheritance a parent can give his children is a few minutes of his time each day." Absolutely spot on. And my next one is from Tehira Marf, an author also, who once said, "My parents loved us, but I wasn't always sure they liked us." Every child can relate, especially those from the Gen X. Okay, so there's this quote from an unknown person who said, "Love your parents. We are so busy growing up, we often forget they are also growing old." And because I agree with that one, there's another one coming from an anonymous who once said, "Love your parents and treat them with loving care, for you will only know their value when you see their empty chair." I agree with that one. Absolutely spot on. Now, I'm sure you would agree with the fact that these quotes are not only for new parents, but also for all kinds of parents, and both the new and the old, and even for children. Now, let's see how this quote relates to what we will be discussing today. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Parenting is a lot different from what we expected it to be and what it used to be. I mean, talking about the Generation X or Generation Y or the Generation Z, that's the Gen Zs. We are raising our children in a world totally different from the one we knew as children. That's for those who are in the Generation X or Y. I mean, the Generation Alpha, that's what we have at the moment. These children will be adults in a world that is rapidly evolving, and then later you have the Generation Beta, the Generation Gamma, and Generation Delta. It is what it is. Hence, there is the need to explore the peculiar challenges implicit in parenting a 21st century child and discovering tips on how to navigate parenting even to the future generations. It is much easier to become a parent than to actually be a parent. Parenting is a marathon, not a sprint, and one would have to be in it for the long haul. Parenting in this 21st century requires thinking outside the box. The world is changing and we are on uncharted waters. Staying balanced and being open-minded would help in building priceless progeny and instilling character in them as they grow. Someone defined parenthood as signing your entire peaceful sleep schedule away in exchange for dirty diapers, sticky hands, and caffeine addictions. Sometimes it could even get worse than that. even though you haven't been able to shut the bathroom door and have a minute to yourself for only God knows how long. Parenthood has its rewards, like those tender moments when your child falls asleep in your hands, or make you laugh so loud when they show you their new dance moves. While there are no awards for being the best parent, we are here to remind you that, hey mama, hey papa, you're doing just fine. You are doing very well because you are the real MVP. That's the most very important personality. And you have got this. And we hope that today's edition of The Conversation not only entertains, enlightens, educates, but it also brings smile to your faces, even as it serves as a virtual hug and kisses from me to you, reminding you that you are phenomenal. Now, that said, my guest on the show today is Nguper Afiemo, who is founder and CEO, Lighthaven Educational Services. She is an educator who has grown through the ranks as a classroom teacher, being in a school leadership, and now runs a consultancy focused on professional development training for teachers and character education for children of ages 0 to 16. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this conversation. But before I go, wish every teacher you see around you, give them a hug, give them a kiss, and tell them Happy World Teachers Day, even though it has passed, but we still celebrate and we love them. See you later. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now we'll go straight to our conversation for today. And my guest is Nguper Afiemo, who is, like I introduced her earlier, she's a school leader and she's also a teacher and children coach. Great to have you on the show today, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. All right, so now let's start. Start by talking about, we have different kinds of generations. We had the generation X, Y, and Z, and then you have the generation Alpha, Beta, and then later you have the generation Gamma, and so now how do you start to if you have to lecture the generations, even the ones that we have and then the ones coming, on how you can raise confident and self-assertive individuals, aside from not just for the children but also individuals across board?
Okay, so raising confident children is something that I'm so big on and always so excited to talk about. And whether we're talking about Generation X or Z or Y or whatever we're talking about, I think that some matrix or some of the criteria are the same and they cut across whatever generation we're talking about. Yes. The key thing is, as parents, teachers, or whoever it is that interfaces with children, we just need to work on key aspects like modeling what we want the children to do, and then affirming children as much as possible. So not in giving vain praise, but focusing on like the efforts of children. So when a child does something correctly, focus on the effort that was put into it. Don't focus too much on the results. That's one thing that I say all the time. This is one way of building confidence in children, because it makes the children to even be self-motivated like that. So they are not too focused on the praises or the gifts or whatever it is you offer them because of their results.
Okay.
If you praise effort, then children learn to get motivated from within. And that's one key thing to raising confident children. Also, give children the room to express themselves as much as possible. Avoid shutting children down. That's one very key thing. most of us were raised in the generation where
Oh, don't remind me.
you know, our parents' word was the final word. I mean, I'm asking you to do it like this, and that's final.
That's it.
Yes, but I think that in the generation that we're in, and even in our generation, it would have helped if we were allowed to express ourselves a bit more. And when I say express ourselves, I'm not only talking about verbally.
Okay.
I'm also talking about like in the things that we like, in the things that we like to do. You know, we were told what we should study in school. You know, we were literally coerced into doing certain things. Of course, some of us, it didn't exactly work out that way. But if our parents had their way, we would do exactly what they wanted. So yes, I think that in raising confident and assertive children, we need to give them the opportunity to express themselves in whatever form, but with guidance, of course, not
Okay.
just, when I say express them, give them the opportunity to express themselves, I don't mean just let
Leave
them loose, you know, with proper guidance, you know, and they can get this guidance in different ways.
Okay.
So, be it, you know, enrolling them in mentoring courses or providing mentoring opportunities for them, you know, working closely with their classroom teachers, being a model yourself, providing them with whatever books that, you know, expose them to some of these things. These are the ways to go.
So I hear you say don't just give vain praises. What exactly is the vain praises? The praise you give after they get the result, is that it?
You know, the natural tendency when a child does something that we find so great, whether we're talking at school. So throughout this conversation, I'll be switching between teacher mode and parent mode because
okay.
I work with the two. So the tendency is to focus on the results that the child has produced. For example, maybe a child has spilled water on the floor at home, and then you ask the child to clean it up. The child cleans it up, and then you say, "Fantastic, good job." You know, it's giving praise like that. Just it doesn't focus on the effort that was put in. So you can
Okay.
say something like, "Wow, you did a very good job of cleaning this properly."
Okay.
And you even took the mop back where you found it. You know, that way the child is able to reflect on how exactly they achieved that wonderful result.
Okay, okay.
As opposed to you just saying, "Good job." Good job for what? Do you
Oh,
understand? Now, the next thing that is going to happen is that the child will be expecting you to say good job for everything, for every good thing that they do, for every result, every good result that they produce. And then you now take their focus away from effort.
Okay.
So their motivation is now external because it's now dependent on your praise. And when they don't get it, they start to sulk. They start to be angry. They lose motivation. But when you channel your praise properly, then it helps them to always pay attention to the quality of the effort that they put into things.
Okay, so now I hear you say that sometimes then you just see them, they just stay aloof and then they begin to sulk, and then I've heard some will just start complaining, "Okay, Mom, why do you always have to get angry when I spill water?" But like you always like angry because I did one wrong thing. But then have you forgotten I did like 3 right things before now? So how do you deal in that situation?
Okay, so I think that parents need to, not just parents and teachers,
Okay.
need to be careful in the kind of responses they provide in these situations. So you're getting angry that the child spilled water. Why should you get angry that a child spilled water? I mean, I think that children should be allowed
To be children.
And to understand that in life you will make mistakes. Even you, mom, who is getting upset, don't you spill water sometimes? Are you saying there is never a time when you actually spill some water yourself? It's because there's nobody there to scold you or to yell at you. And because maybe you have the capability to actually immediately tidy up after yourself. That's why, you know, that flaw or that mistake might not be highlighted. But we all make mistakes. Even when we go to work, there are times when we're given tasks to do that we make mistakes on the job, you know. So it's when we capitalize on children's mistakes like that, it puts undue pressure on children, and it gives them the unrealistic, you know, expectation that mistakes are not allowed.
Okay.
And that's really, really dangerous for a child's confidence, because if a child is now afraid to make mistakes, no great person ever became great without failing or making mistakes.
But then I hear you remind us of how when we were growing up, which we'll definitely talk about some of these things that we experienced. They will tell you when you hear a child crying and crying, just beat the child up, and then you learn not to cry again. Or when the child makes a mistake, beat the child up, and then you learn not to make that mistake. So from that beating, that's where their brains return to factory setting. That's how we all grew up. So is it that as the generations keep shifting, you have to keep relearning how to cater to children?
Definitely. The things that we are dealing with because of the ways that we were brought up, some of the things we're dealing with, we don't even know the depth of these things. These things show up in little ways. You see that question you just asked me about getting upset just because a child spilled water? That kind of reaction, if you dig deep, it's showing up because of trauma from your past. It's probably because that is the exact way you were shouted on or yelled at when you were a kid for a little mistake like that. I remember when I was growing up, I felt like I was a very clumsy person because if I was afraid. I was always afraid because, I mean, you can't drop a plate.
I can imagine.
And it shatters. You won't hear the last of it. First of all, from the yelling, and then the fact that, so what we started doing, if you break a plate or a cup, you need to pick it up quickly and hide it.
Exactly.
Do you
I can
understand?
relate.
Okay. So now, some of these things are showing up in our lives as we're parenting now. Before you catch yourself, when you are, you know, going to yell at your child, you've already done it. And it's because of how you were raised. So some of these things are trauma-induced. They are there, they are deep within us, and unfortunately, they are showing up in little ways. So now, the thing that we're trying to do is to be conscious of these things as we're parenting.
Okay.
So that we can do better.
All right, now, so how do we help a child to develop him or herself, and then just either develop themselves? Because I hear you say that when we're growing up, we're told what to learn. We're told the profession we should go into. I can remember my mom was a nurse, and then she'd tell you, you have to be a nurse, QED, nothing else. And I hated the sight of blood. And she was not ready to understand that fact. She just knew that you must be a nurse. So since the generation keeps shifting and parenthood or parent styling has to change, how then do you help that child to develop themselves, understand themselves first, before they understand that, okay, this is the profession I need to go into and not what my parents want me to go into?
Okay. Right. So this question is right up my alley because I run an organization called Lighthaven Educational Services. And one of the things that we focus on is creating opportunities for children to learn about who they are. We have a signature program called Who Am I? It's a self-identity series. Okay. So in that program, what we teach children is just how they get to know who they are, their strengths, their weaknesses, their fears, you know, just different aspects of them. And the thing that parents need to know is that you have to look out for cues about your children's interests.
Okay.
What is it that gives your children life? What do they like? Just respect their obsessions at the different stages, because the truth is these things change. So
Yes,
sometimes your child is interested in dancing. All you have to do is support that child.
Okay.
Don't talk them out of it or shut them down and tell them, oh, what is dancing going to do for you? You know, your child wants to be in ballet club in school. You want your child to be in maybe swimming.
Okay.
Have the conversation with the child. Listen to your child. The child is yearning for expression when it comes to dance. So allow the child to enroll in the ballet club. But what you can do about your own desire for your child to swim is discuss with the child and tell him or her the reasons why attaining the skill of swimming will be good for them.
Okay.
It's very important to have your child's buy-in or your children's buy-in, you know, when you have, you know, suggestions for them. When you force them to do things that you want them to do, then usually you don't get the best out of it. But if you logically explain to them why it is important for them to acquire this or that skill, then you'll see that there will be a lot more compliance, you know, and openness from them to flow with what you're saying.
Oh, great. All right. So we usually take questions from our social media corner, and then someone sends and say, so how can I, as a new parent, effectively be my child's teacher, coach, mentor, and cheerleader when my child believes I don't know better than her school teacher?
Okay, so what I would say is just be involved. Be as involved as you can be. If your child starts school, your child is of school age, just make sure you know what is going on in school. Whenever you are asked to show up in school for one thing or the other, make yourself available. There's this thing, when teachers know that a particular parent is very interested in what is happening in their child's life and in school, they like it. They will support you. They will ensure that everything is as it should be when it comes to your child, you know. So that parent needs to just make themselves available. Check through your child's homework pack when they come back from school. Try and educate yourself. Attend parenting seminars, you know, get exposure. Pay for professional development courses when it comes to parenting. If you even need to take a child, a childhood, an early childhood course or two, take it. It's not just for teachers. It will be helpful to you as a parent as well. Just
So parents need to also take that.
I mean, if it depends on how much you really want to know, how much exposure you want to get. You know, if your child knows that you know what you're doing or you know what you're saying, that whole argument of, oh, my teacher said this, or it will be less.
Oh, okay.
It will be less. Sometimes they doubt it because maybe you have showed them that you're unsure in one or two occasions. So yeah, even I, as a teacher, I get it from my kids sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, my kid still believes his teacher's word over mine sometimes. And I have to remind him, listen, young man, don't forget, I'm a teacher of teachers. So yeah, I just think she needs to get more education. Just let her child know that she's very, very invested in they are learning, and she knows what she's saying and doing.
So it has to be you making the child understand and then let them see it, so that at that point where you just have them saying that, oh no, my teacher said it doesn't have to be like this. Because I've even seen moms who will just start shouting on their children. Do you remember that I gave birth to you and I put you in that school?
Yeah, I know.
So it's
it can be quite upsetting. I'm not even saying that after you've gained all this experience and exposure, it will end. It's just something that happens. Like, I mean, children do it. That I think that's one thing, that children see their teachers as,
what
all
exactly is
that.
it they give them in school that makes them see the teacher as the hero?
Well, I think it just comes with the territories. The teachers have power. Teachers have much more power than they realize, because children adore their teachers. But it also depends. It depends on how much the child feels seen and heard and valued, because it's not all about the fact that the teacher is the person providing me with knowledge and guiding me through this learning experience. There's the whole other part of how the teacher is also bringing in that whole part of caring for the child, valuing the child, listening to the child, making the child feel seen. Okay, so that thing it just elevates the teacher automatically. Yeah, the fact that the teacher is the authority in the class, it does something.
All right, so we actually do for a break, but before we go on that break, how do you begin to teach children at an early stage to have empathy? Because now we see so much domestic violence, and then they'll remind you of the fact that it depends on how they were being taught at home. So how do you begin to teach your children from the early stage to have empathy?
Okay, so I think that it's in recognizing your children's feelings. When a child feels sad or upset, or when a child has all these emotions, the first thing we need to do as parents is to first of all recognize that my child is feeling sad, or my child is feeling upset or angry or something, and then you say to the child, listen, I know you are feeling upset right now. I will be upset too if someone snatched my toy like that. But let's look at it this way. What if you let him play with the toy for 5 minutes, and then I'll give you this one, you play with it for 5 minutes, and then you switch.
Okay.
The child sees that you understood
their feeling at the
their
moment.
feeling at that moment. So that's one way, by showing the child that you recognize their feelings. And then also, very key, you need to model it. Model
great.
empathy. How do you treat people around you? Our domestic staff, how are we treating them? Are you every day insulting your domestic staff in front of the children? How are you speaking to your driver? How are you speaking to just people around you? How much good are you doing to people around you that the child can see?
Even between couples.
Between couples. How are you people relating in front of the child? So if there is a relationship between dad and mom where there is a lot of hitting and anger and throwing of harsh words around the place, then of course the child is seeing it. And unfortunately, it's planting seeds. And these seeds will be deeply rooted in a child like that. And it might take a lot to get it out. So it's all about protecting the child's space, exposing the child to the world, in a safe way.
Okay.
Let them see that there are different things happening in the world, and then help them to relate to some of these things. I'll tell you a quick thing. I worked with someone, a very wealthy person, sometime. He had kids. they had everything they wanted. They could afford anything they wanted. But once in a while, he did something. He put his children in the car and drove them to one of the nastiest slums in Abuja.
Okay.
And then he'll park his car somewhere and then they'll take a walk. They weren't even clear paths for them to walk. They would mess their shoes up, it would be so dirty, and they would see children playing around. Yeah. And then as they went, they in that community, they knew him. So whenever he got there, people would come and sit around him. And they didn't used to go empty-handed, they would go with stuff. And they could see how children were scrambling for food and all that. And he did that every now and then.
Okay.
What do you think an experience like that would do for his children? So it's intentionally taking steps to expose children to the other side of things so that they're able to relate to these things.
So I'm going to ask you two questions, and I'd like you to take them in one breath. Now, you've talked about the parents, how they can deal with teaching the children to have empathy from an early stage. How about the teachers? Because it's not only from this house, when they go back to the school, and then how they can bring this out in the society. How would teachers also teach children in that regard? And then secondly, when I actually heard a story of a cousin of mine told me about one of his classmates who took a boat and then stabbed the boat driver because they had a heated argument. And then when and he even ran away immediately. So when they started searching and then doing some research, they found out that he has been violent, and then their parents, they're always shielding them because they are very popular. They don't want those things to get out. So when you already know that your child is XYZ, I don't want to use the word violent. You already know that point. At that point, how do you deal? How do you take them out from that stage?
Okay, so your first question, how do
teachers.
Okay, so teaching of character is something that can be done both implicitly and explicitly. So teachers need to take any opportunities they can get to instill some of these things in children, whether you're teaching it as a subject, because I know that there are subjects that actually cover some aspects of character. But then even within the classroom, how are the children treating each other? Teachers need to draw children's attention to some of these things. If a child comes into class and is upset or is feeling sad about something, as a teacher, are you going to completely ignore that child and say, oh, we have math, let's all face our math? Or are you going to intentionally pull that child in? Sometimes you can do it yourself. You call the child and say, oh, Jane, how are you feeling today? Are you sure everything is fine? You can talk to me. Tell me what is happening. And then the child, can either start to speak easily or not. Or you can involve other children.
Okay.
You can get them to find out from their classmate who isn't feeling too good. What is going on? What can I do to help? That kind of thing. So if we provide such opportunities in our classroom, provide a warm environment in each of our classrooms, there's no telling how far we can go with this thing.
Okay.
Now, for the other part, if you have noticed that your child is exhibiting, some of these, violent behavior and things like that, well, I think that for it to have gotten to that stage, it was ignored for way too long.
And maybe they must have been shielding or hiding it.
Yes. How hiding it for what? Why are you hiding it? Well, if you're hiding it, then I mean, you should be happy with what is happening now. Because if you're hiding it, then it means you don't want help. And that's the problem with a lot of parents. When we find out or when we are told that there are issues that need to be taken care of with our children, we run away, we hide it, sometimes we're in denial, we don't do what we are supposed to do. But if these things are, picked on early, there's intervention.
Okay.
that like children can also go through therapy. Children can go through therapy. Children can, like I said in the beginning, you can introduce children to mentorship programs where children can be taken through some of these things. They can be taken to the root of some of their issues and taught how to come out of them in safe ways. So parents should not be afraid. If you notice character issues in your children, you need to speak up, reach out for help. I am available for things like that. You know, I met someone recently who was talking about some issues about their son. And I said to them, look, if you would like me to step in, I'll be happy to do that. One-on-one intervention could also help. Even if not one-on-one, there are also group coaching sessions that children can benefit from. But the problem is parents may, some parents think that it's a waste of resources investing in that part. You understand? So yeah, I think that the first thing is that early intervention.
Okay, great. All right, clearly there's more we can unbundle from this conversation, and we will definitely get right into it from the second leg of the show. We'll see you later. Join us again.
It's one thing to, first of all, embrace the child that has been given to you as a gift in whatever form. We've seen children who have real special needs issues become great people that are known all over the world. But the key thing is you must be the first support to your child.
Okay.
If you as a person is unable to accept, you know, your child as they are and provide the support that the child needs, then you will always feel that inadequacy even when it comes to other people.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you actually just joined us, you've missed out on a whole lot, but then you can still join in the conversation. As my guest on the show today is Nguper Afiemo, who is children and teacher coach. All right, so before we went on that break, you've actually exhausted quite a number of things, but now let's go back to helping the children, especially the violent ones, helping them to get back in themselves, because now we need to stem the tide of domestic violence. And anytime you just hear man beating his wife or woman beating her husband, they will tell you, go back and check how they were being trained at home. So how do we, in that way, how do we stem the tide of abusers, domestic violence in this regard?
Okay, so for children, I think that the most important thing, you need to protect your children. Parents need to be conscious of what they're letting their children see. When fights are going on, or there are frequent arguments that become physical, it is unfair to let the children witness things like this. That is one of the most common causes of violence. Another thing is in the way children are punished.
Okay.
So consequences, the way children are punished for their mistakes. If children are beaten blue-black because they broke a cup, or because they spilled the ink, or you know, little things like that, what do you think will happen in the future? Like I said, trauma, it shows up again later. So if you're beating up your child frequently, and then the child goes out and starts to do the same thing, it's not far-fetched. Don't be surprised. Don't act like you do not know where it's coming from. You know where it's coming from. It's because you are hitting the child at every opportunity.
But then someone would remind you that when we were growing up, we were beaten blue, black, we were scolded on,
Yeah.
and we were shouted on. And then some people will remind you, at least that I was actually molded me or shaped me to what I am today.
It shaped you, but what I'm telling you is that there are residues of the effect of those training approaches inside of you that you are unaware of, that you are yet to deal with, and they are showing up in little ways. It may not necessarily be in you abusing your child physically, but it can be expressing. It can be expressed in other ways, like you being excessively harsh.
Okay.
To your child. So yes, we were beat up, we were hit, we were punched, and not all of us are doing the same thing to our kids. But then the residue, the part of that is left inside of us, we're still giving it to our kids in one way or the other. So we're getting really upset at them for their little mistakes. We're not giving any room for errors, and things like that. So yeah, there are ways that these things are showing up. Okay?
So how about movies, the kind of movies you allow your children
to watch?
Yes,
I was coming to that. So I've listed, violence between parents. I've listed violence, inflicted on children, and then I was going to say movies as well. Media, the kinds of things that the children are exposed to. Those of us who have kids who are left behind with the nannies, what are they watching when you're not there? Those of us who give our children devices, tablets, iPads and whatnots, how much access do they have to some of these things that portray violence? Then there is also association with other children. So other children might come with these things, all this baggage from their own homes. And then your child innocently is put in the middle of all of this. And then, of course, your child cannot be there and be getting punched and remain defenseless.
I remember when we were growing up, your mom would even tell you, if they beat you up, your mom would even beat your own back.
Beat them back.
If you come back crying, she would tell you, oh, so you did not beat she would even beat you and say, go back and beat the person.
Exactly. So I've heard, teachers also say the same thing. Some teachers also have the same, that if somebody does it to you, do it back to them, So in a bid to defend yourself, you find that you're imitating the same violent behavior, and before you know it, you can't separate the sheep from the so everybody becomes, and it becomes part of you as well. It becomes another way that you're expressing your emotion.
All right. So I recall seeing a video online some time ago, and I'm sure my producer is going to even share it with us, where you have a child slapping his mom, not in Nigeria though, and everyone came out to start holding the child. I think the child should be about 5 or 6 or 7, not more than 7, slapping and hitting the mom and insulting her, and the mom kept crying. And some people were complaining what exactly was the reason. So we had to now do a research, what happened. So they said that the mom is an addict. She's a drug addict. And so the child is trying to help her out of it. And then she has that 5-year-old son and a probably 2-year-old daughter. So when people were trying to bring them out of it, the boy kept complaining because she had to steal money to go buy drug. So in his own mind, that's the best way I can treat my mom. Beat and slap. So is that actually a good way? Because I heard some people come out to even defend him and say, you don't know what it feels like having an addict as a family. So what he did was right, and then it brought about so many controversy and argument. Let's get your thoughts on
I
that.
mean, you're saying this child was 5?
5.
Come on, like the child in question is actually very young. So I don't think the child completely can justify what they're doing. This child is a victim of circumstance, if you ask me. The child has just found himself in this situation. The child himself needs safety, the child needs help, the child needs support. The child is only doing what he or she can do best. Like, there's, in the same situation, another child could react in another way. Another child can just go into themselves and crawl into the corner and cry all day long without knowing what else to do. That's also not the best way for that to be handled. It's a very sad situation, if you ask me, because there really isn't much a child in that situation can do. So whether it is the child hitting the mom, or it is the child sitting in the corner and crying and feeling sad and depressed, any child in that situation needs help together with the mom. So really, I don't think that the conversation should have been, is it correct or is it not correct? There's no way out of it. There's no child that will behave in the ideal way in such a situation. So I think every child put in that situation will just find a way to cope with it. And I don't think there's any positive way to cope with something like that.
I quite agree. All right, let's talk about catering to children with special needs, either as a working parent or as a working mom or dad, or even as a teacher. How do you deal? Some people just, I have a particular family, and then a woman who has a daughter who's down with cerebral palsy, and then she will just remind you of any time she wants to take her daughter out, and how other parents will say, oh, please don't associate your daughter with my children, or just take her, like the way they always talk to her, so she just prefers to leave them at home. And then it can be really draining, because I've seen her like emotionally drained, and she almost passed out because things like that, how you have to deal with children with special needs. So at this point, how would you actually tell parents or teach parents to deal or cater to children with special needs, and then also people who are not catering to special needs to have empathy when they see such?
Okay. So I'm not a special needs expert, but of course, because I've been in education, I've seen a lot of it. First thing I'll say to parents who are dealing with special needs children is, I mean, in whatever form they come, children are gifts. Okay, so I think that it's one thing to first of all embrace the child that has been given to you as a gift in whatever form. We've seen children who have real special needs issues become great people that are known all over the world. But the key thing is, you must be the first support to your child.
Okay.
If you as a person is unable to accept your child as they are and provide the support that the child needs, then you will always feel that inadequacy, even when it comes to other people. But if you embrace your situation, if you embrace the situation that you find yourself in, then I think that's the first step to dealing with it.
Okay.
Because if you see a special needs mom, a mom with a special needs child who has recognized their situation and made peace with it, if you see such a mom with their child outside with confidence, it does something to you, the spectator.
Ah, great.
Okay, so I think that that's the first step. So what if people are staring at you? Well, my child is special, and that's why they're
That's all that
staring at me.
matters.
That's why they're staring at her. She's different. Yes, all of us are different. So I think that that's the first step. I've seen a couple of moms who have taken this stand, who have refused to, bow out in shame and say, oh, my child is different. No, I have to hide the child.
Ah,
And now they're accepted. Now they're accepted because whether you like it, it's either you deal with me and my child as we are, or you scoot over, something like that. So I think that that's the first step. You need to recognize your situation, make peace with it, and carry it with confidence. I'm not
Great.
saying that it will be easy.
yeah.
There are many mental battles that you would have to fight to get to this stage that I'm talking about. But you can do it. That's what I'll say. You can do it. Many have done it before you, and you will pull through. Just remember that things will not always be like this.
Great. All right, now let's talk about how we can tackle or deal with the rising issue of pedophiles, and how you can teach your children to understand that boundaries. This is my space, and then understand boundaries. You don't come close, and then know when it is no, stop. No is no, and when it gets to you're trying to encroach into their boundary, what they should do at that point, so that we can actually stem that tide of pedophiles.
Yeah. Okay, so the issue of pedophiles, I think it's a song that we cannot stop singing. Because no matter how much we hear these things, sometimes we still take it for granted. Expose your children to sex education safely. Be the one to do it by yourself. As a mom, as a dad, do it by yourself. Teach the children early about their body parts.
How early is early?
Once a child is able to start communicating, once a child is able to start understanding you and speaking to you, it varies. Some at the age of 2, they've already started talking clearly. Some a little later than that. But as far as the child can understand you, you can start to do that. What is this? These are my eyes. This is my nose. And then those skip parts. Because many moms prefer to say, oh, eyes, nose, and hair, all the fancy parts, and then you leave the most important parts. So start early. Teach them the real names of their body parts.
Oh, not the wee.
No.
Okay.
From the beginning, tell them this is your vagina. Okay? It's not a bad word. That is what the part is called.
It's called, yes.
Teach them the names of these things so that they no longer see it as a big deal to talk to you about these things. So if someone touches them there, they can tell you. And then you start telling them, okay, this is good touch and this is bad touch.
Okay.
Bad touch is, you can't let anybody, for me, I add some parts that the books don't add, but you can't let anybody touch your tummy, you can't let anybody touch your breast, you can't let anybody touch your underarms, you cannot, just now, what I would even tell my daughter, who is a preteen, I'll tell her, as far as you feel uncomfortable with where you are touched, resist it immediately.
Okay.
Resist it immediately, because she can come back home one day and tell me, oh, somebody was holding my hand in a weird way. I didn't like it.
Oh, great.
Because they must not touch you in those parts. Somebody can now hold your hand and be, caressing it in a way that is uncomfortable. Do something about it.
Great.
Don't be quiet about it. Let me know. Let your teacher know. Let everybody know. Make a fuss out of it. Make a big deal out of it. Yeah. So I think, starting early to tell them these things, have these conversations with them, and let them know that it is something that you're willing to address at every point in time.
Great. All right, even as we begin to round up, how do we teach our children to have good communication skills, or how do we teach them eye contact, body language? Because when we're growing up, when you all or your mom takes you to a neighbor's place and then ask you, if the neighbor asks you, okay, will you eat? By the time you look at your mom, she say, eat. But there's a kind of eyes that she gives to you, and then it already sends a signal. You just tell the person, oh no, I don't want. But it looks like these days children are not even understanding. By the time you even give that eye contact, the child will even ask you, mom, is the eye paining you? So since we are dealing with generations that are coming, how do we deal with the in terms of eye contact, body language, and teach them communication?
Okay, so I think communication should be open.
Okay.
If the children are not conforming with your eye twitching and whatever, I mean, you just say it. If you don't want your child to eat the food, what you say, I don't want you to waste. I mean, you should have a reason why the child shouldn't eat the food. I don't think it's these days it wouldn't be much about like poisoning and all those things that our parents used to be afraid of. I think you should be open enough to say, look, I know you're going to waste that food, and I don't want you to waste that food. Can you just keep it aside, and then when you're a bit more hungry, you can have it, or when we get home, you can have it. I don't think there's no big deal there, because communication is everything. What is the point of twitching your eye and doing all those things when the person you're talking to cannot understand it? That's not communication. Communication is, a two-way.
Sending and receiving.
Yes, sending and receiving. And to be honest, even at this time when, things are changing, your kids sometimes, you will still find that they look at you. They look at you. It's like they are saying, can I? And then you say, oh, go ahead, no problem. Or that's the point where you say, no, I don't think. I think you've eaten quite a lot today. Just let it be. That kind of thing. So the non-verbal communication is still happening in a way. However, there's no harm in actually speaking out and saying it as it should be. Just say what you want to say.
Great. All right, even as we begin to run, let's get your last words to parents, to teachers, and then to children who are watching us at the moment, even as we begin to as we're joining the rest of the world to commemorate World Teachers Day.
Yay! Okay, so dear parents, you are doing just fine. There is no rule book that has all the answers for parenting. Just make sure that you are improving yourself at every point in time. Just make sure you're exposing yourself to literature, to conferences, workshops, or whatever you need to do to get more education on how to go with your kids. Teachers, you're doing an awesome job. You are taking 10, 20, 25 children all by yourself, and you have to play mother hen to all these kids. You're doing a great job. Just make sure you pay close attention to the needs of every child and give them freedom to express themselves with your guidance and direction. And then children, speak up, okay? Tell your mom, tell your dad, whatever needs to be told. Don't keep it within you. Whatever your struggles are, tell your mom, tell your dad, and they'll listen to you. Okay?
Great. Thank you so much. What a fine place to anchor. It's been a wonderful time having this talk with you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. All right, viewers, that's where we end this show for today. It's been a wonderful time as we have been chatting with Nguper Afiemo, who is a children and teacher coach, and I'm sure you must have been rightly entertained, educated, and informed. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you next time. My name is Annabelle Oji. God bless you and yours. God bless Nigeria.